So kind of before I get started on today's topic, I kind of want to show this. A lot of you, if you watch my channel, you know that I'm a woodworker, and I do a lot of things with wood out in my shop, out in my garage. Got a pretty extensive carpenter shop, and so I'm working on trying to get the profile of this right for the Console 1 and the Console 1 fader. And so I've just about got the profile right, meaning is it matching up to the exact way I want it to in the right angle. And there's a lot of people that sell these already kind of made, but I want to make one that's really truly high-end furniture grade, like a showcase piece, not just functional. Both are important, but I like to really kind of take it to the next level, and I'm kind of working on that right now. And once I've got that, I'll share that with you so you can take a look and see what I came up with. Eventually, I'll be able to do one with an armrest and one without an armrest for those that need that. And so kind of look forward to that coming up in the future. And I'm also in the process right now evaluating the new Icon series of control surfaces. I have all three here in the studio, so kind of look forward to that coming up. And so you can get my honest opinion, because that's the only thing you're ever going to get on this channel. You're going to get my honest opinion of what I really have to say about it, and you can decide whether that's a good buy for you. So speaking of buys, purchasing, I guess, rather, or selling, depending on your viewpoint. Today's topic's going to be, if you're selling gear, you're probably not going to be too happy with today's topic. If you're buying gear and you've got the money to purchase that gear, you may be very happy about this if you're not already aware. I happen to buy and sell gear on a regular basis. Typically, if I want a new piece of gear, I'll kind of really focus in and figure out what exactly it is I want. And oftentimes, the first thing I'll do is look at my studio and say, what do I have in here that I hardly ever use? Let me just sell that to help that fund this new purchase, or at least partially or wholly, whatever it may be. But, I tend to do that. So I do buy and sell a lot of gear. And so I tend to watch the trends. And I've been watching this a lot here over the last 6 months. And what I'm noticing very evidently is that the used gear prices are plummeting. They are really dropping. What somebody is posting that particular item for sale at is selling for significantly less than what they thought they might get out of it. The topic today is not going to cover every type of music gear, but certainly the ones I've been looking at are typical, very popular pieces of gear at different levels, quite honestly, at different levels of the cost per se, and really kind of researching that to find out what that trend has kind of been, and it's been fairly consistent. You're always going to have some brands out there that retain their value no matter what. Army is a perfect example of that. Metric Halo is another good example of that. You don't tend to see those interfaces go up for sale in the used market very often. And when they do, they tend to generate typically, historically, a much higher sell price than you may expect. In other words, that difference between, what it costs new and what it costs used is not as significant as it is in other pieces of gear. Now, when we buy a new piece of gear, and there's some things I'm always going to be an advocate for purchasing new, and there are going to be other things where I'm probably going to be an advocate of looking to find it used and save yourself some money. So it depends on that particular piece of gear. And so when you look at the really what people are asking for something, here's what I'm noticing. And I've noticed it a lot, and it's been very consistent. How much further is it going to go? I don't know. But before I get into the used prices, I don't know about you, but are you noticing you're getting a whole lot more emails in your spam or whatever it is from various sellers and things like that, where this is on sale, this is all Fender guitars at what percentage off, this dropping this in price. I use this thing called slickdeals.net. And I really kind of find some deals across the board. And one of those, sometimes music instruments show up, and you really see, you kind of get a trend of what's not selling out there, because you'll see significant reductions in price. And I've certainly been seeing that. But today I'm going to specifically talk about the used market. And in the used market, what I'm seeing is a huge disparity. I have seen progressively, it has gone down and down and down and down to the point it's gotten so low that you really better think long and hard is now the right time to sell that. It may or may not be, depending on your circumstances. How far this is going to go and how long this is going to last, I don't know. I guess it depends on the type of gear you're selling. Typically, analog hardware will continue to retain its value for a long time, especially if it's a good, high quality piece of analog gear. Whereas things like control surfaces and things like that, they tend to not hold their value as much because they're oftentimes a new one is coming out or something like that that's more compelling than the old version. So trying to find that time to sell it could be a little bit tricky. And that's why you want to keep your ear to the ground to find out kind of as best you can to pull out that crystal ball and see kind of what's going on. Now I'm going to take a control surface as an example. I have recently sold my S1, my Avid S1 and my Avid dock. I've recently sold that. I've decided, as much as I actually enjoy using those interfaces and they do a very good job, I tend to work in various digital audio workstations, and Yukon is simply not supported by all of them. In the beginning, you saw what you looked at as far as the Console 1 system. I am a huge advocate of that system, and that's one I'm going to be exploring, as well as kind of taking a look at these. And so I'll have more to speak about that in coming videos. The price that the S1 and the dock are getting have significantly declined since I really purchased those less than a year ago. And so they've really gone down since then. You don't typically see that kind of decline. I'm talking about hundreds of dollars here. Whereas today, as an example, I think that dock sat there for, better than 30 days, and it was priced very solidly. I mean, very solidly. One of the first things I always do when I'm deciding to sell something is I go on Reverb. Now, if you don't know you can do this, you really need to educate yourself. But if you go in and you list the filters right, you keep scrolling down and you'll see expanded or other options, and you drop that arrow down there to see what's below that, and you will find that there's a box that says sold, okay? And so now what you're doing is searching all of Reverb for the units that sold and what they actually sold for, and then how long ago did that happen. You can learn a lot about that, not only from whether you're buying, you want to see really if you're going to make an offer, what that should be and how close you should get to that, how competitive you might want to be, or how really not much competition at all. If you're a seller, you need to have a realistic expectation of what you're selling it for. And oftentimes you'll see on a lot of Reverb sales where the seller has continuously multiple times dropped that price because they realize that it's not selling. Now, oftentimes people sell for various reasons. Sometimes they need the money. And in those situations, you might have some isolated situations where a piece of gear gets let go cheaper than it really should because they're kind of in a bind. However, you can't look at just one. You've got to look at kind of all of them and see that trend and see where it's going. And I am seeing that significantly. Now, there's a lot of reasons for that. Inflation is through the roof, at least here in America. I'm sure it is around the world, but here in America, inflation is through the roof. The average hourly scale is nowhere near in line with the rise of inflation. And who knows what's going to come up. Rent is outrageous now. For those that rent and purchasing a home, your interest rate has gone up significantly. So that's really affecting a lot of this. And so in that situation, those things that are not great ultimately cause other opportunities to become available. And so depending on where you are, now is a good time if you've got the money. Now, I never suggest, putting yourself out there financially to buy a piece of gear. You need to know that you've got yourself, your family, if that's appropriate, and a solid nest egg. And if you've got some extra cash that you've got going around and this is your passion, there's nothing wrong with investing in that. And ultimately, if that is you, now is a really good time to get into this. The decision between buying used versus new, it's interesting. I'm going to be really paying a lot of attention to see if new prices are coming down. Now, what won't happen, not very likely to happen, unless things get much worse, is you're not going to see the map. In other words, the advertised sale price. I don't think you're going to see that necessarily drop. But what you'll often see is a couple of things. You'll see 20% off, 30% off, whatever it may be, a discount from the retailer. Obviously, the stores that sell the most gear are going to be able to offer the greatest incentives. You're going to see 0% financing for longer expanded time periods than you ordinarily would. And so there's a lot of ways they go about doing that, but at the end of the road, when it's all said and done, that's really what's happening. They're lowering the price. They're just doing it in creative ways. So I'm going to encourage you strongly, okay? If you're looking to buy, do your homework. Go in and search to see that history. Get a good idea of what you likely can get that piece of gear and be patient. Don't rush. When you find that opportunity, don't rush. Don't be afraid to contact that seller, even if they don't have make an offer available as an option. I never put make an offer on my sales because I don't want to be bothered by all that necessary clutter. I tend to do my homework and I find out the price that I'm willing to accept and I price it accordingly and in line with the history of what it's selling for in that time period. And that's just what I do. You do it however you want. Same thing if you're a buyer. Make sure you're going in and looking. Ultimately, you can make an offer by sending an email directly through Reverb. And I'm using Reverb as an example. There are many different sources for this. I used to use Craigslist a lot. I simply do not trust that. I think there's too many scam artists associated with that. So there's a cost to having to be able to sell gear. And of course, the fees and everything associated that with Reverb. Don't get me started on Reverb because they've really kind of ratcheted that up to where I think they're charging way too much for their services, but that's not for me to decide. The only way I can decide is whether to choose to use it or not. But as of today, that's really the only really viable option. I know Sweetwater has theirs. I'm not so sure how successful it's going for them. I don't tend to really look at it that often. Maybe I should start looking at that more frequently. But regardless of any of those things, I think whatever your avenue of purchasing are, you need to arm yourself with enough data to be able to make an intelligent decision so you can spend your money wisely. So today, okay, what is today? Today's towards the end of August in 2024, because this video is set out there for a while. So if you're watching this video in May of 2027, well, it's probably not applicable at that point, which is why I say the date. I think that's important to get that out there. It's going to be very interesting to see where we go. I hope for all of our sakes it doesn't continue to decline. Granted, we like seeing gear prices decline because we can get more for our money. However, that's typically tied into the economy and everything else. And I don't think anybody wants to see that go through any more damage than is already happening, because for many folks out there, today is a really hard time. And I understand that. And I feel sorry for everybody that falls into that category. May God bless you and help you, really be able to deal with some of these difficult times for you and your family. But regardless of this, kind of take what I'm saying and consider it. Let me know in the comments down below what you think, what your experience has been. Maybe you've had a different experience than me. Let's talk about that down below. But I think we should all support each other in being able to acquire the best gear for our uses in our studios for a very competitive price. And I think that's what we all should be striving for. So consider that, think about that before you make your next purchase. Don't just be, ready, fire, aim, and just click on that because you think it's a good deal. I think you should make sure that you know it's a good deal or not. And if you're selling gear, all I've got to tell you is either make a decision whether you're going to hold on to it for now and not let it go because you may lose more money than you're willing to lose, or have realistic expectations because it kind of is what it is. But until next time, I hope every one of you have a great day. And whatever you do, with whatever gear you have or whatever gear you're going to purchase, go make some music with it, make people happy, make yourself happy, and enjoy the process along the way. Bye-bye.